March 6, 1944, 10:21 a.m., over the Elbe River west of Berlin. At 26,000 feet, the sky is a sheet of steel blue, cut with white contrails and punctured by flak bursts, black blossoms that hang for a heartbeat, then vanish. An FW-190A bucks in thin air, its BMW engine snarling as a pilot. An Oberleutnant with a dozen victory marks under his canopy leans into the turn. Oxygen hisses. The canopy edges are rimmed with frost. You can almost feel the cold pressing through his gloves. Ahead, the American bomber stream moves like a slow avalanche. B-17s and B-24 stacked in tight boxes, sunlight flashing off thousands of rivets. From below, it must look unstoppable. From up here, it looks like work. The radio crackles with the controller's calm voice. Fein Verband, Kurs Berlin. Begleitet's Vorhanden. Enemy formation, heading to Berlin. Escort present. Escort present. The Oberleutnant lets out a short laugh behind his mask. Not because escorts are harmless. Because escorts have limits. They come with the bombers, and then they turn back. Somewhere near the frontier, the Americans peel away, and the heavies keep going alone, predictable. Ripe. That's where the Luftwaffe has lived. He searches for the shapes he expects. Thunderbolts, lightnings. Big fighters with big engines and short patience. He finds something else instead. Long noses, clean wings, tight fuselages that look almost sculpted for speed. Mustangs. In the mess, they call them pretty escorts, like someone brought a racing car to a knife fight. Fast, yes. Elegant, yes. But an escort is an escort. It stays close. It plays defense. He rolls a Focke-Wulf onto its back and dives. Airspeed climbs. The bomber box swells in the gun sight. Engines, aluminum, the glint of spinning props. This is the moment he understands. Squeeze the trigger. Peel away, climb, repeat. A shadow slices across his canopy. A Mustang impossibly close. For a blink he sees the American pilot's head turn. Goggles catching the sun. Oxygen mask pale against his face. The Mustang slides into position with no hesitation, like it has been waiting for this exact dive. Tracers stitch past the FW-190's wing route. The Oberleutnant snaps into a hard brake. The world tilts. G-forces slam him into the seat. The harness bites his ribs. He expects a Mustang to overshoot, expects the escort to pull back toward the bombers the way escorts always do. It doesn't. The Mustang stays glued to him, matching every roll, every desperate shove of throttle, every snap of rudder. It isn't circling the bombers. It isn't guarding. It's hunting. And in that instant, the laugh dies. Around him, the sky is suddenly full of motion. BF-109s dropping out of the sun, FW-190s slashing through formations, bombers bristling with defensive fire. But the Mustangs aren't just orbiting the boxes. They're breaking off in pairs and fours, diving into the fight, chasing interceptors away from the bombers instead of politely escorting them. Somewhere, someone has changed the rules. Because if the Mustangs aren't content to guard the bombers anymore, what are they here to do? And it didn't start in the sky over Berlin. It started back England. Back in England, weeks earlier, General James Jimmy Doolittle takes command of the 8th Air Force. He looks at the casualty lists and sees the truth in plain ink. The bombers will never be safe until the Luftwaffe is broken. So he gives the fighter groups a new mission. Protect the bombers by destroying the fighters. Roam ahead. Sweep the routes. If German aircraft turn for home, follow them. The order is simple. The consequences aren't. Because now, for the first time, the fighter under those American pilots, the P-51B Mustang, and the new P-51D can actually obey. Under the wings hang drop tanks, extra fuel and teardrop shells, sometimes metal, sometimes paper. turning an escort into something Germany hasn't had to face, a fighter that can stay. A fighter that can wait over the Reich long after the old escorts would have turned back toward the channel. The Oberleutnant shoves the throttle forward until the engine howls. He dives away from the bomber stream, away from the kill zone, away from the fight he came up here to win. He aims for home, toward the familiar geometry at German fields and the thin gray scar of a rail line that leads to his airstrip. The Mustang follows, not at a respectful distance, close enough that he can see the dark mouth of its radiator scoop, the subtle flex of its wings in the slipstream, close enough to make it feel personal, like the American has chosen him. Flak bursts begin to thicken in the distance. Berlin is near. So is safety, he tells himself. The belt of guns around the capital, the runway with his mechanics, and the refueling truck. The comforting idea that an escort won't dare come lower, won't dare chase into the teeth of German defenses. He glances back again. The Mustang is still there, steady as a shadow. Most escorts would have turned back by now. This one is getting closer, and he's about to learn why. Ahead, through haze and smoke, the straight line of an airfield starts to sharpen. Hangars, dispersal revetments, the pale strip of concrete. Ahead, through haze and smoke, the straight line of an airfield starts to sharpen. Hangars, dispersal revetments, the pale strip of concrete. If he can just get the wheels down. He looks over his shoulder one more time. The Mustang's nose is pointed at him like an accusation, and it isn't turning away. The airfield rises out of the haze like a promise. A pale strip of concrete. A line of revetments dug into the earth. Dark hangars crouch low behind trees. The Oberleutnant forces his breath to slow, forces his hands to stop shaking as he lines up for the approach. Landing is supposed to be the safe part. You come in low, you come in fast. You put the wheels down, and the war stays up in the sky. His left hand reaches for the gear lever, and that's when the Mustang closes the last distance. Not with a roar, there's no sound in the cockpit but wind, engine, and thin, cruel wheeze of oxygen, but with a sudden pressure in the air, like a storm cloud sliding over your head. The Oberleutnant looks back. The American fighter is there, perfectly centered, nose steady. Its canopy flashes. Its wings hardly move. 6-gun ports sit in the leading edge like dark eyes. He snaps the stick hard right, try and corkscrew into the flak belt. His world becomes ground and sky and ground again. The horizon tumbles. The runway skids sideways in his vision. The Mustang matches him. A burst of .50 caliber fire slashes past, close enough that he feels it in his bones more than he hears it. Bright holes appear along his right wing, as if someone took a glowing needle and stitched through metal. The Focke-Wulf shudders. The engine coughs, recovers, then coughs again. He's too low to dive, too slow to climb, too close to home to run. Below, the airfield comes alive. A flak-reeling .38 starts hammering, 4 20mm barrels, its tracers arcing upward in frantic green. Somewhere else a heavier gun joins, slower, deeper, each burst like a fist hitting the sky. Ground crew scatter from the edge of the strip, some pointing, some ducking, some frozen as they watch a Luftwaffe fighter staggering with an American on its tail. You can almost feel the betrayal of it. The Oberleutnant drops the gear anyway. The wheels begin to extend slow, stubborn, mechanical, like they haven't heard the panic in his voice. The moment the drag hits, the FW-190 becomes a wounded animal. The nose wants to fall. The airspeed bleeds away. The Mustang doesn't care about flak the way he expects. It doesn't peel off. It dives with him. Down into the airfield's throat, down into a place that used to mean safety. The American pilot is taking a risk because speed is his armor, because the Mustang can do something the Luftwaffe is still struggling to understand. It can afford to be here. The Oberleutnant flares too early. The aircraft mushes. The runway rushes up. The wheels touch for a heartbeat, and then a new burst rips through the fuselage. The cockpit fills with a sharp stink of cordite and hot oil. His instrument panel lights flicker like a dying candle. The left wheel collapses. The fighter slews sideways, metal screaming against concrete. Sparks erupt, bright as welding arcs. He fights the stick, fights the rudder, but the Focke-Wulf doesn't want to be saved. It wants to crash. It slides off the runway and digs into the grass, carving a trench. The propeller bites the earth and shatters. The canopy jams for a terrifying second, then pops free with a crack as he slams his shoulder against it. He falls out of the cockpit into mud and winter-dead grass, rolling, coughing, sucking at air that tastes like gasoline and soil. Somewhere behind him, men are shouting. Somewhere above him, an engine screams past a treetop height. He looks up. The Mustang is not climbing away. It levels out and comes back in low and fast, straight over the revetments where aircraft are parked nose to tail like sleeping predators. Its guns open again, and the airfield becomes a slaughterhouse. .50 caliber rounds tear through aluminum skins. They punch into fuel tanks. A parked Bf-109 erupts in flame, the fire blooming orange and oily black. A mechanic dives into a ditch as bullets chew the sandbags above his head. Another man doesn't make it to cover in time. He drops and doesn't move. The Mustang flashes by, wings rocking slightly as the pilot jinks through the flak. Tracers chase it, too slow, too late. The American is already gone, already pulling up and away at an angle that feels arrogant, like he's showing the airfield how helpless it is. A second Mustang follows, then a third. They aren't here to duel. They're here to erase. The Oberleutnant crawls toward a shallow slit trench as the ground shakes from another explosion. His hands tremble so hard he can barely keep his elbows under him. He presses his face into the dirt and listens to the sound above. Merlin engines high and smooth, passing back and forth like a saw. This isn't what escorts do. Escorts don't come down to your runway. Escorts don't turn your landing pattern into a trap. The Luftwaffe has lived for years on a rhythm: climb, strike, land. Even when the bombers came deeper, even when the flak belts thickened, there was always that last stretch to run home. The field, the mechanics waiting with fuel and ammunition where the fear could loosen its grip. Now that rhythm is broken, and it was broken by something as simple as range. Up in the thin air, the Mustang's advantage had seemed almost unfair. A sleek fighter with a Packard-built Merlin up front, a laminar flow wing that sliced through drag, and drop tanks hanging underneath like extra hours of life. It could escort the bombers farther than anything the Americans had brought before. But down here, at ground level, the advantage becomes something else entirely. Time. A Mustang pilot can linger. He can circle outside the flak belt and wait for a Luftwaffe fighter to limp home. Wait for the moment it slows for landing. Wait for the moment it's committed gear down. Flaps out, energy bleeding away when it can't dodge and can't dive and can't run. A Luftwaffe ace might be deadly at 20,000 feet, but on the final approach, every man is the same. The Oberleutnant's ears ring. He watches through the lip of the trench as a Mustang pulls up and banks sunlight on its wings like a knife edge. The pilot is probably grinning behind a mask, or maybe he's stone cold, counting seconds, counting rounds. He isn't thinking about bravery. He's thinking about orders. Because back across the channel, in a cold briefing room with maps pinned to the wall, General James Doolittle has done something the Luftwaffe will never forgive. He has stopped asking his fighters to be shields. He has unleashed them as spears. And on days like this over Berlin, over the Reich, over airfields that used to feel untouchable, the Germans begin to understand what that means. Not tomorrow, not in the memo. Here, in the mud, with burning aircraft in the background and Mustangs still prowling overhead. The Oberleutnant wipes oil from his cheek and stares at the runway where his aircraft died. A staff car speeds toward the dispersal area, an officer standing in it, waving men into position. Flak crews reload with shaking hands. Mechanics drag fire extinguishers toward a blaze that's already winning. And above it all, the Mustangs turn again, as if they have all the time in the world. To the men on the ground, it looks like the same silver predator circling a wounded herd. The Oberleutnant keeps his head down in the trench, jaw clenched so hard his teeth ache. Above him, the flak crews fire until their barrels glow, until the air stinks propellant and hot metal. The tracers reach up, and the Mustangs slip between them. Another German fighter limps in from the east, low and wobbling. You can tell from the way it flies that something vital is broken. It tries to line up with the runway anyway, stubborn and desperate, the way every pilot does when home is the only thing left. A Mustang drops behind it like a knife falling. The German aircraft never touches down. It bursts apart in a flash near the edge of the strip, scattering debris across the grass. The men in the trench flinch as fragments clatter down like thrown stones. The Mustangs climb away at last, not in retreat, but in choice. They bank toward the east, toward the bomber stream, toward whatever target is next. And for a moment the airfield is quiet except for fires crackling and men shouting names into smoke. The Oberleutnant lifts his head and watches them shrink, specks against a winter sky. He realizes something cold and simple. They are leaving because they want to, because they can. Hours earlier, across the gray water of the North Sea, the day began in darkness and diesel fumes. RAF Leiston, Suffolk, 5:12 a.m. Floodlights wash over rows of Mustangs lined nose to tail on pierced steel planking. Ground crew move like shadows in thick jackets. Hands black with oil, shoulders hunched against the cold. A propeller turns slowly as a mechanic pulls it through, listening for the right compression. Another man checks the guns, feeding belts of .50 caliber rounds into the wings, the brass glinting in the light like a promise. In the cockpit of a P-51D, a young American pilot sits with his parachute harness half-clipped, helmet on his knee, looking at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. He is a first lieutenant, one of dozens in a fighter group that has been flying escorts for months, watching bombers vanish in the clouds, watching empty places return. You can almost feel the tension in the hut when the briefing begins. The room smells of wet wool and cigarette smoke. A map is pinned to the wall, red yarn stretching from England across the sea, over Germany, straight to a circle drawn around a name everyone recognizes, even in whispers. Berlin. A major reads the weather first. A captain points to flak concentrations. Someone makes a joke that doesn't land. Then the intelligence officer says the words that change everything. The fighters will not be glued to the bombers today. The pilot squadron commander, a man with tired eyes and the calm voice of someone who has watched too many friends not come home, taps the map with a pointer. Listen carefully, he says. New guidance from the top. We stay with the heavies until the bandits show. Then we go get them. We don't chase sports. We will chase them so they don't come back tomorrow. There's a murmur in the room, half excitement, half disbelief. For months the rule has been sacred. Stay with the bombers. Guard the boxes. When fuel gets low, turn back. Now the rule is different. Now, if a German fighter breaks and runs, you follow it. You follow it all the way. The lieutenant glances at the man beside him, a wingman who still looks too young to shave. The wingman's eyes are wide, but there's a spark there too because everyone in that room understands the unspoken thing. If you can reach Berlin and still have fuel to fight, the Luftwaffe can no longer hide behind distance. Outside, the Mustangs warm up one by one. Engines catch a cough and then settling into that smooth, confident roar. The ground trembles. Exhaust flames flicker in the dark. Under the wings, crews bolt on drop tanks. Some are metal, some are crude and light, almost like paper shells built for one purpose: range. The pilot watches a crewman pat the tank, as if it's lucky. Berlin is far. Berlin is why it's there. By mid-morning, the formation is climbing through broken cloud, sunlight spilling over the wing like a wash of silver. The lieutenant's oxygen mask presses cold rubber into his cheeks. He tastes the metal tang of the hose. He looks down and sees the English coast fall away, then nothing but water, then the thin line of the continent. Up ahead, the bomber stream appears hundreds of aircraft, contrails streaming like white scars. The Mustangs slide into place, close enough to see gunners in the waist windows, tiny shapes waving as if they're greeting a guardian angel. But the lieutenant isn't thinking about being an angel. Not today. A call crackles in his headset. Bandits 12 o'clock high. He looks up. Tiny black specks diving. Some behind them. The classic attack. His flight leader's voice is sharp, sudden, and alive. Drop tanks. The lieutenant reaches for the release. The drop tanks fall away, tumbling end over end toward the cloud layer, and instantly the Mustang feels lighter, eager, like a hound slipping its leash. He pushes the throttle forward. Merlin responds with a smooth surge that pins him back. The fight happens fast. A Bf-109 flashes across his canopy, gray and angular. Its wing crosses stark. He rolls, pulls, tries to cut the turn. The 109 climbs, stalls, drops its nose. For a moment, the lieutenant has it in the reflector sight. He squeezes the trigger. The Mustang shudders as 6 Brownings hammer. Tracers reach out, a bright line in the thin air. The 109 jerks. A puff of smoke. It dives hard, no longer elegant, no longer proud. It is running. Old rules would have said, let it go. Stay with the bombers. The lieutenant hesitates just long enough to feel the weight of that habit. Then he hears a new voice in his mind, the commander's steady tone in the briefing hut. If it comes back tomorrow, someone dies. He follows, down through 20,000 feet. 15. 10. The air thickens. The whirl grows louder. The ground rises into sharp detail. Fields, roads, a river like a blade. The 109's wheels drop. It's going for an airfield. The lieutenant's stomach tightens. This is where German pilots used to vanish. This is where they used to be safe. But the Mustang is still fast, still stable, still hungry even down here where every gun on the ground can reach you. The airfield snaps into view. And suddenly he sees it the way the Germans must see it. The terrible new reality made visible. The runway isn't a finish line anymore. It's a trap. The 109 flares desperate, bleeding speed. The lieutenant lines up, sees the aircraft wobble, sees men on the ground scattering like ants. His finger tightens on the trigger again, and in the instant before he fires, tracer fire rises from the trees at the far end of the field, reaching up for his Mustang like a hand. He has a choice right now at treetop height. Break away or commit. He commits. The tracers climb toward him in slow, accusing arcs. Green and white lines rise from the trees beyond the runway, each one marking a gunner who has finally found his range. The first lieutenant can feel it now, the danger that lives at low altitude, where speed evaporates and every rifle, every cannon, every nervous hand on the ground can reach you. The German fighter is directly ahead, wheels down, flaps sagging, tail wobbling as it fights gravity and damage at the same time. The runway fills the reflector sight. This is the moment the old rules would have demanded restraint. This is the moment escorts used to turn away. He doesn't. The Mustang steadies, as if it has been waiting its entire life for this angle. The lieutenant squeezes the trigger. The aircraft shudders, not violently, but with controlled mechanical fury. 6.50 caliber Brownings speak in unison. their recoil running through the wings like a heartbeat. The tracers walk up the German fighter's fuselage. The effect is immediate and final. The engine flashes, then disappears in smoke and fire. The aircraft slews, clips the ground short of the runway, and comes apart in a spray of dirt, metal, and flame. The explosion is sharp and ugly, too close for comfort. The lieutenant yanks the stick back and banks hard, hauling the Mustang up to the flak, through the last desperate reaches of ground fire. The aircraft shudders once as something punches through the wing, maybe flak, maybe debris, but the controls hold. The Mustang climbs. Behind him, the airfield burns. He doesn't circle to admire it. He doesn't look back. He levels out just long enough to check his gauges fuel low, but not gone, then points the nose toward the west, toward the bombers, toward the long road home. Only then does it hit him. The German fighter never had a chance. Not because the pilot wasn't skilled, not because his aircraft was weak, but because he ran out of sky before the Mustang ran out of time. And now a question starts creeping into every Luftwaffe cockpit. If you can't run home, where do you run? Across Germany. On days like this, the realization spreads quietly at first. It reaches the pilots of Jägerschwader 26 and JG-11, men who have lived by precision and timing, climbing at the right moment, striking where the bombers are fat and slow. It reaches the ground crews who watch Mustangs orbit just beyond flak range, waiting like patient animals. It reaches commanders reading after-action reports that all say the same thing in different words. Enemy fighters followed us home. Enemy fighters attacked during landing. Losses sustained near airfields. The Luftwaffe has been built on expertise, on aces, on the belief that skill, experience, and tactical brilliance can offset numbers. But numbers have teeth now, because the Americans are no longer content to protect. They are committed to destroying the force that keeps coming back. The Mustangs didn't win the war in a single day. They don't sweep the skies clean in one glorious battle. What they do is worse for their enemy. They stay. They come back tomorrow. And the day after that, each mission grinds something away that can't be replaced easily. Experienced pilots, training time, confidence, the invisible sense that the sky has rules you can rely on. By April, the effects are unmistakable. German pilots begin to hesitate before attacking bomber formations, knowing that breaking off doesn't mean escape anymore. It means being chased. It means dragging a fight all the way back to your own front door with an American on your tail and nowhere left to go. Some dive for the deck immediately, hoping terrain will save them. Some climb into the clouds and pray. Some don't take off at all. On the American side, the mood changes too. Fighter pilots return to English airfields with oil streaks on their wings and empty belts in their guns, buzzing with a strange knowledge that, for the first time, they aren't reacting anymore. They're shaping the battle. In debriefing rooms, maps filled with grease pencil marks showing where enemy fighters were engaged not just over bomber stream, but deep over Germany, over rail lines, over cities, over airfields that once felt untouchable. The 8th Air Force still takes losses. Bombers still burn. Men still die. But the balance has shifted. Quietly, relentlessly. Back on the German airfield, long after the Mustangs are gone, the Oberleutnant stands with his arm in a sling and watches smoke curl into a gray afternoon sky. Mechanics and soldiers pick through wreckage, pulling recognizable shapes out of twisted metal, laying them gently on the grass. No one speaks much. There's nothing to say that hasn't already been understood. The war in the air is no longer something that happens out there, over the bombers, over the front lines. It happens here now, on the runway, in the landing pattern, in the last seconds when a pilot is most vulnerable. For years, German pilots have owned the climb, the ambush, the exit. Now they're learning what it feels like to be followed. That evening, as the sun sinks behind the English countryside, The first lieutenant shuts down his Mustang on a steel-planked runway far from Berlin. The Merlin ticks as it cools. Ground crews swarm the aircraft, pointing at the flak hole in the wing, slapping the fuselage like it's a living thing that brought him home. He climbs down, legs stiff, hands still buzzing with adrenaline. Someone hands him a cigarette. He lights it and watches the smoke drift upward, thin and pale against the dusk. Tomorrow, they'll fly again, and the day after that, until the German pilots stop coming up to meet them, until the sky, once so fiercely contested, begins to empty, not because courage has vanished, but because staying has finally beaten running. And somewhere over Germany, the laughter that once greeted the sight of a pretty escort has been replaced by something far quieter.